Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about the worst pandemic ever. According to the Wall Street Journal, COVID 19 had spread across the U.S. long before anyone was even aware that COVID 19 was in the U.S. The pandemic was so bad that we weren't even aware that it was occurring. When the governor of Colorado announced that he was going to lock down the state in mid March, I immediately got in my car and fled to Kearney, Nebraska. I went there to film the sandhill crane migration and was staying with an ICU nurse who's a friend of mine. One of her nurse friends told me that she believed that COVID 19 came through the community during December and January. At that time, about 30% of the kids were absent from school, and there was quite a bit of a mystery virus going around the community, which had very similar symptoms. However, there was no dead people lying in the streets of Kearney, Nebraska, like was claimed was occurring in Wuhan, China. The Chinese government spread lots of propaganda about people dying in the streets and people being welded into their homes, which became the general idea of the lockdown which was adopted across the Western world. When there was a serious major pandemic going on, like during the Black Death, people didn't have to go get tested in order to find out they were sick. It was pretty obvious. There were lots of people actually dying in the streets. Governments didn't need to spread propaganda to convince people that they were sick and that there was an epidemic occurring. It was pretty obvious to everyone. China was a major source of propaganda, and so was Italy. Italy, like New York City, sent sick people to nursing homes and made a huge mess. No sane person would do something like that, but this is government we're talking about. The average age of death from COVID 19 is about 80 years old, which is about the same as the average age of death from all other causes. And probably more than half of the deaths in Western Europe and in the United States occurred in nursing homes which got infected. Now let's compare that to the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918-1919, which had an average age of death of 28 years old, and the death rate around the world was 300 times higher than COVID 19. These 28-year-olds would become sick and die the same day or within 2 or 3 days later. Let's compare that to COVID 19 here in the state of Wyoming, where we've had a total of 54 deaths. About half of the confirmed cases here in Wyoming are people under the age of 30, most of whom have no symptoms and would have no idea that they were infected if they hadn't have gone in to get tested. Hypochondria is a mental health disorder where people who are not sick believe that they are, and government has induced mass hypochondria on the population. This article from the New York Times gives a good feel for why it's occurring. The political left wants a new normal. They want to implement the Green New Deal. They've already wiped out the airline industry and are making arrangements for people to be unable to travel long distances in the future. The governor of California just banned the sale of gasoline powered cars
I'm going to
after the
skip
year
through this.
2035. He's
I just want to skip through this California piece. Just skip it a little bit more.
I want to say it again. We in the World Health Organization do not advocate lockdowns as a primary means of control of this virus. The only time we believe a lockdown is justified is to buy you time to reorganize, regroup, rebalance your resources, protect your health workers who are exhausted.
How come we don't hear about this? World Health Organization. And they just go ahead and lock everything down.
But by and large, we'd rather not do it. Just look at what's happened to the tourism industry, for example, in the Caribbean or in the Pacific, because people aren't taking their holidays. Look what's happened to smallholder farmers all over the world because their markets have got dented. Look what's happening to poverty levels. It seems that we may well have a doubling of world poverty by next year. We may well have at least a doubling of child malnutrition because children are not getting meals at school and their parents in poor families are not able to afford it. This is a terrible, ghastly global catastrophe, actually. And so we really do appeal to all world leaders. Stop using lockdown as your primary control method. Develop better systems for doing it. Work together and learn from each other. But remember, lockdowns just have one consequence that you must never, ever belittle, and that is making poor people an awful lot poorer.
As the World Health Organization said, the lockdowns are catastrophic, which is apparently what the Washington Post wants. And Bill Gates wants everybody in the world to get his vaccine. Not just once, but he wants everybody to get his vaccine multiple times. If somebody would have told you back in January everything which was going to occur this year, you probably would have thought they were telling you insane conspiracy theory. And yet here we are. Mark Twain said, "The more I learn about people, the more I like my dog." And Toto agrees with him. You can visit Toto and Kyrie on the web at realclimatescience.com.
You can watch the whole thing at realclimatescience.com. Thanks to Tony Heller for this. And just briefly, my name's Steve Close. I have a Bachelor of Science in Zoology, and I work for Los Angeles County Health Department as a health inspector for over 8 years, so I do have some science background. I also had the Hong Kong flu in '68. I had the London flu in 1973. Probably had the Asian flu in '57, and I recall probably had the swine flu in 2009. So I've had the flu a number of times, and I just knew never was there a reaction like there was for this thing. There's something much greater going on than this disease. And as far as China goes, yes, they had the propaganda, but they're not to blame for our reaction to their propaganda. All right, that's all. Thank you so much. Bye.